All right, so Darius, let's kick this around. You've been on the show many times. You've said a lot of different things. About 90% of it has been true, which boggled my mind. But it shows your expertise. So, I appreciate you having you back on. It's really an honor. I know you're going to be doing a lot of great things in the future. We'll talk about that toward the end of the interview. I know you're building that website, dariusaross.com. If people want to hear more about you, you can search you on YouTube. You can search you on Google. There's all kinds of information, past interviews he's done with me and other people. So you can check more about Darius on that. Let's go into this. You know, the mainstream media tends to lie to the American people. They've been doing that for years upon years on end. They're talking about how economic news is fairly good for the Biden administration. When me and you talk off air, it seems like it's doom and gloom for the foreseeable future, at least 10 years. What is your take? Tell the people listening what your take is on the economic news of today, what's going to go on for the next 5 to 10 years. Just give us a little bit of a report.
I'm going to break it down and go backwards. People are forgetting the past. We had a 1929, we had an 87, we had a 99, and we had a 2007. And in all those eras, we had situations that, if you don't remember Zimbabwe, you don't remember the Mexican crisis, you don't remember Germany and its crisis, and Venezuela, and so forth. The problem with it is that every crisis got ignored because speculation is what created the crisis in the very beginning. Speculation and greed. Now, the problem with that is that we've had a greed and speculation at an all-time high, particularly speaking when it came to stock buybacks. You're looking at buybacks that have been almost trillions, okay? And that created a certain level of greed and monetary, as a concept. So the Fed funded it. Everything worked so far, so good. But here's the problem now. 4 banks, heading toward 300 or 400 banks plus. I'm saying close to 3,000 or 4,000 when all said and done. And the bottom line of it is, you're saying we're going to save the banks. There was a bail-in, there was a bailout, there was a bail something. Okay, we'll call it what you want to call it. The bottom line of it is that nobody is realizing all these things need to fail to clean the system. So where the Biden administration is now, you're just propping the system up. Until it fails, you can't clean out the trash, and Wall Street can't go back to normal, and you can't have a situation where, economically speaking, we begin to see prices begin to neutralize and begin to moderately go back to somewhat of a normality. Because now we have unemployment, the numbers. We're 9 months behind. You're not going to see unemployment really start getting strange until September. So basically, all these people that are getting off work now, they're still spending their unemployment. They're still spending their severance pay. So we haven't really seen the unemployment numbers yet. Okay? So this is where this gets tricky at. All the numbers are still being played with in the budget debate.
Talking about unemployment, a lot of this could have been, I guess I'll frame it this way. A lot of this could have not happened. This crisis that's coming up, a lot of it would have not happened if we actually did and put some policy in place and really drain the swamp. I know that's a common term now in American politics, but if we did that in 2008 with the last crisis, this crisis coming up would have never happened. Just explain that to the viewers.
If in 2007 you would have let the majority of those institutions fail, you would have had a situation where we would have had a clean slate now, and you would not have all this debauchery of greed and fixing the numbers and playing with the numbers in forensic accounting. You have a complete forensic accounting scenario going on, and I'll explain forensic accounting. I can take the numbers going forward and tweak them out 10 years. I can do accounts receivable and play around with them. I can do accounts payable. I can turn around and take funds that came from X spot and put them on an offshore holding company, or I can switch them around to a remote holding company. All these things are part of this whole nightmare, plus the derivatives. Nobody's talking about the derivatives. And I keep emphasizing, if you have cross-collateral contracts, at some point in time, somebody has to pay. And investors now are starting to demand their money quietly. That's what happened with all the institutions that failed already. The investors from around figured out at some point in time, hey, this bank is unstable. They started bailing out. What happens when they actually realize that most of these companies are zombies? They're not producing any income. They don't have any revenue. And now people are not working. Unemployment, technically speaking, is 10 million jobs that are unfilled, but there are 10 million people that aren't working.
So
Okay.
let's talk about the unemployment crisis in this country right now. You just stated 20 million people aren't working. A lot of men aren't working. There's more
Right.
women working right now than men. That's a crisis in itself. But regardless of that, seeing all these people that went to college, and I'm one of them for all these majors, bachelors of arts, political science, as far as bachelor of arts, history, gender studies, the list goes on and on. And unless you're going into the teaching field, you cannot really get a job with those kind of career and those kind of majors rather that you established in college. I blame that on the education system. We could go down that realm, but it all goes back to a lot of people having trouble getting jobs because they were pushed into by the educators at the college. The schools push them down this realm in general, as far as that goes. And then the kids come out, they can't get jobs. And, there's only so many teaching jobs. If you get the teaching job, they pay you crap money. So you can't get a house, you got to live in an apartment, and you're just going down this tornado spin, and it just keeps going and going and going because you can never get ahead on the salary you're making, and you got to deal with all kinds of crap. So I know I blab it on, but talk about that unemployment crisis and how the colleges really played into this unemployment crisis that's going on in the country right now.
I'll start here and I'll be the first one to call it out. And hopefully, folks will listen very carefully to what I'm saying. Unemployment in this country is going to reach over 100 million people. I'm going to repeat that again. Unemployment in America will reach 100 million people. Now, the startling fact about that is that's while we are in the midst of this economic crisis as it's playing out. And part of the problem of it is folks that want to check this out, take a look at the Indian Times newspaper, and they'll see a article that states the unemployable folks in India. They have these MBAs, BAs, PhDs in coding and all types of computer sciences. No jobs because they can't come to America. There's no purpose in going to Europe. There's no other place to go. So as a result, they can't get jobs. Okay. The visa situation is all screwed up. The immigration system is all messed up. And here in America, if it's that bad there and they are creating our sciences and our various things that relate to medicine and so forth, if it's that bad there in America, people forget that education is a business. It is a business. It is not educating the students. So as a result, they did what they were supposed to do. They created a business out of education. But that was not looking forward to what the students were going to get when they came out, which should have been a lot of people should have been going to vocational studies, from nursing to construction to repairs and construction related industries. Instead, they went into computers. They went into trying to become some business science major, trying to become an accountant. No, no, no. It was a business. And that was a mistake. So as a result, now we're sitting here with all these people that are unemployable, and now they're looking at a side hustle. When in American history did we have people having that many side hustles? They're doing 4 jobs for side hustles. Insane to be able to make a living wage.
Yeah, I agree with that, but can we just go put an exclamation point on this? Can we just go down that rabbit hole with these other majors? And I hate to call it silly because I don't want to disrespect people that work their butt off in college and really got into these, because some of these majors are important, but there's just so many of these people that went into these majors. There's not enough jobs for them to fill with these majors. So, what would you say to the people that are, went into these majors and then they come out and they're working at McDonald's, Burger King, maybe not working at all, maybe working in a restaurant. And you don't need a college degree to go and work in a restaurant or to work at Burger King or McDonald's or work retail.
You're going to have to completely retool your skill set. I mean, completely retool your skill set. You're going to have to now figure out what it is that you're good at and what it is that makes sense in today's society. Because right now, healthcare, particularly speaking, when we're looking at a generation of 70 million individuals like myself that are over the age of 50 will be retiring, will be needing healthcare services from the needle that goes in your arm for blood taking all the way down to geriatric services. So we're going to have a new retooling of society in America that's going to be based upon healthcare. So folks are going to have to start waking up and realizing healthcare is going to be the next thing. Logistics is going to be a big thing because, again, we still have a logistics problem. There are no truckers. They can't get product from point A to point B. The construction trade industry. Yes, you have a wonderful thing called this economic bill that was approved or semi-approved that was there, but you don't have the workers anymore. We're minus 500,000 workers plus in the construction trades. So we still have a problem. They're not going for the top three industries: construction, healthcare, and logistics. This is where you need to retool your skill set at.
So how do we get people back into the workforce? Because there's so many people not working. They could be, just because of the pay wage that, they know that they can get better government assistance. Is it the government that doesn't want these people to work? What is it? How do we get these people back working again so we can be, develop a better society again and, make America great again? I hate to use that pun again, but let's do it.
Here's the problem that you got to focus on. How do you turn around and change the last 3 years of COVID assistance? Okay. You created a situation where you said, okay, you got to stay at home. And you created a situation where I'm going to offer you incentives to stay at home. Okay. And then granted, we had a sickness that was going on and so forth. But now we have a problem. Folks have now began to develop their entrepreneurial skill set, if you want to call it that. So they figure out they can work at home and make money. Okay, which is fine, but everybody can't do that. So the problem now becomes, how do you get them off? Well, there's two problems there. You've incentivized the reason to want to stay home. Okay, you've incentivized it based upon the fact of any and everyone can now be an influencer. That's a big problem. Everybody now says, okay, I can sit at home and do X, Y, and Z and make money. Okay, fine. But then you have a situation of nobody wants to do the job at the restaurant. Nobody wants to do the job at the hairdresser. Nobody wants to turn around and cut the hair and so forth. So you've created this problem, and now you've created these hustles. And in order to do it and actually set things back to normal, you're going to have to cut a lot of assistance. The government now has to do what it did to create the problem. You got to reverse it. You got to now cut all these folks off. But then cutting them off, now you have a crime problem getting increased. So all these things are going to be very hard, very difficult, and that's why I say the next 8 or 9 years are going to be very difficult because you've got to do the same thing that you did to create the problem. You got to reverse it, back up.
What is it going to take to really, get this crime problem out of control? We're going to have to crack some heads together, or what's going to happen here? Because it's starting to get really out of control in a lot of the big cities all around the country, and even small towns too.
Well, let's go back to something called the Rockefeller laws here in New York when they came get tough on crime in New York with the whole marijuana and so forth. In order for you to actually create, and that law was very detrimental to the African American community, and it's recognized to this day. But in order for you to turn around and create a stoppage of crime, you're going to have a nationwide policy that actually deals with everything from the weapons to and including small petty crime. But the problem with that is, just like unemployment, the numbers in the penal system and the numbers in the criminal system will become the same as unemployment, millions of people. Because right now, on the average, you have 1 out of every 5 persons in this country has some type of criminal record. So could you imagine what would happen? I think that number is pretty close to where I'm at. If you look it up, I think that number is pretty right. 1 out of every 5, I think, in this country has a criminal record or some criminal excursion. So when you look at that, what's the likelihood of now you have normal people that have been shoplifting or whatever else because they're going through stuff and they're tough times? What would it be like if you actually start incarcerating or you start putting behind bars people that are going through things? We'd be in the millions.
Just a fact check, it says anywhere from 70 to 100 million people have a criminal record in
Mm-hmm.
America. It says 1 in 3, so you were pretty close.
Okay, so
That's
you see my
pretty
point?
scary.
That's right. You see my point? Can you imagine what it would be like if you start arresting everybody that has done a crime? I mean, this is from petty things to major things. See, we're on a
Yeah.
whole nother level right now, and people don't really know this is a fact. So I'm quoting something that I was in a conversation with some folks in law enforcement not too long ago, and this is a
Mm.
fact. So in order to get crime under control, imagine what would happen to control it. We're talking about 1 out of every, say, 4 persons would be having a case.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about poor people necessarily. We're talking about people that are comfortable too, because they're
Oh,
going to just shoplifting for the
right. I want to go into this question, audience question. A lot of people well off during this crisis that's already started and will be ongoing, as you stated, until 2030. With that said, let's talk about the people that are well off. How are they going to fare through that? I'm sure some of them are going to fare out extremely well. We've seen throughout the COVID crisis, 500 billionaires were created. Besides that point, what is going to happen through this crisis? How many billionaires will be created? How many of these people that are pretty well off are going to lose their ass in plain English throughout this crisis?
Okay, let me reverse this for a second. One of the things that you're going to find out now, there's a silver lining here of opportunities here, right? I'm going to again go out and limb and say, as a first person to say this, we're going to see in this lifetime the following equations. You're going to see a series of quadrillionaires, okay? Trillionaires, billionaires, multimillionaires, and the standard millionaires. And that number, based upon the population of the Earth coming soon, is probably going to be about 10 billion people on this planet. And about 100 million of them, which is 1% of this Earth's population, will be in one of those 4 or 5 categories. Okay.
Wow.
So are they going to prosper? You dang right. 1% of the world will control 99.9% of the money. So it'll be the slaves and the have it all. Okay. That's just the bottom line. There's no other way to put it. So will there be opportunities? Absolutely, because they're going to take advantage of all the opportunities based upon being in a position to have the money to leverage the opportunities. So that's what this is all about, leverage.
But there are going to be people that are well off that are going to still lose, correct?
Yes. The ones that will be the ones that will be losing will be the ones that are not wise enough to understand how to strategically utilize their leverage. Okay, for example, if you have a portfolio full of non-performing assets, you're in a losing position. And you're starting to see that in real estate now. Some of these guys that went so far out, they just bought, but they didn't realize how to manage it. Okay. Or you have those guys that like the fancy cars and the nice houses and all this kind of thing, and they're not from old money or noble money, so to speak. They're in that category. Or you have individuals that didn't understand proper money management and getting the right people in place to actually position them to make sure their money was secured and tight. So those individuals, which I say will probably number probably in the next 5 years, probably 3 to 4 million people, they'll lose their ass off, guarantee you, because they did not have the proper money management skills, nor did they have the proper folks to assist them in being able to secure themselves.
What would the value of these people that you're talking about, as far as these people that are well off, what would their value be, the ones that are losing?
You want a total value, or you just want what they're
Just like
what
kind of a, kind of the, not a total value, but just kind of an assessment of, these people worth 1 million, or they worth 20 million. What
it's
would
going to
you?
be individuals worth between, and when I say net worth, that means their assets and what they have as their income and what their businesses are or whatever they're bringing into the table. I would say probably from 500,000 to probably somewhere in the $50 million range, because
Okay.
that's that level of money that has not necessarily positioned themselves and or not necessarily understanding the wherewithal of what money can do when you're first generation. Second, third, fourth generation, they're pretty secure because they understand the rules of this game. But the first generation, they're still trying to figure out how to position their families to be okay, but they're busy giving their families too many things when they should be tightening their belts on this timetable.
There's a lot. We've talked about this before. A lot's been talked about this. Even the mainstream media is now speaking about this. Marco Rubio, my senator, came out and said that America, through all, messing around in the world for so many years and creating all these wars and sanctions on these countries, doesn't have many friends around the world besides some of these countries in Europe. Besides them, that's about it. You can't really run a world with just having a couple of friends in Europe. With that said, talk about the United States' role in the world now. We have all these countries that are forming BRICS now that have a lot of natural resources. They have nuclear weapons. They have a lot of manufacturing. And we don't have any of those things besides the nuclear weapons and the military. So, and that's already really outstretched as it goes. So we're kind of screwed right now, plus the money we gave to Ukraine that we weren't putting into our own military and our own people. So just talk about the U.S. as far as their what the world sees us as, and what's next as far as with the BRICS thing, because that's very scary thoughts for people that do know what's going on.
The BRICS basically represent the economic economies of developing countries, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and so forth. Now, the bottom line of it is that these developing countries were for so long third world countries. Well, now they're no longer third world countries because most of their citizenry that could left their countries and came to America to get educated, or they went to Europe and get educated. Now you have some powers to be reckoned with. And now the thing that I always say that's important is America spent too much time fighting and bickering with situations that were basically minuscule to the bottom line of the overall concept of the country. Because here's the thing now, when we're looking at this economics of what we're looking at now, these countries have now combined or are beginning to combine. And this Belt and Road Initiative is creating a around the world us against them principle. And unfortunately speaking, the bottom line that's going to be is that China and Russia are going to come out on top of that, which is a smart move on their part. And theoretically speaking, America is going to find itself as a third world country because it's not looking at we've spent 20, 30, 40 years in wars that did not necessarily gain us anything other than, what we gained, patriotism, okay, which is fine. But it did not gain the superiority that we thought. And now these countries that once upon a time, the fear was in their hearts, per se, of America and America's might, there's no longer that fear anymore. Because it's like, okay, you got nuclear weapons, I got nuclear weapons. You got, say, an economy, I got an economy. You have gold, I got gold. See, the fear is gone now. So now you're looking at an America that has now retooled itself. And I'm saying we have 3 lost decades, 3 decades before America can recover to any level of economic vitality that it once had. And this next decade that we're in currently now is going to be the most painful one. And while that's going on, these BRICS economies represent basically right now, India just surpassed China as the number one country in the world when it came to population. So Africa is going to be next. So there are going to be 4 billion people on the African continent, 2 or 3 more billion in India. So we have close to 10 billion people that'll be against one country with less than 300 million. So let's do the mathematics.
Yeah, so let's just talk about that. Was this started when Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard? Obviously, we go back to the petrodollar with Saudi Arabia trading as far as all these countries were trading in U.S. currency that really propped up, rather, excuse me, the U.S. government as the country was funding us, all of our programs, and then now, as you said, there's a lot of power. There's new leadership in Saudi Arabia since Biden and Trump came into power. It's a different ball game now, and they're running the show along with China and Russia, and they're just kind of playing it out a lot differently than it was played out many years before.
What you're looking at now goes back to the military complex that Eisenhower spoke about. We're looking at now from the administrations of Mao Zedong when he was in China and what he said about the Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward has happened. And not only for China, but for Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Russia, and I'm going down the list, and even now with Africa. So what's happening now is you have young Turks that the new leadership is no longer in fear because they have been educated in a system that is an American system. So they're no longer fearing what they considered at the time the biggest guy on the block. As Theodore Roosevelt said, walk softly and carry a big stick. They're no longer in fear. So therefore, their position of the hour is that now I have the same military might, I have the same economic strength, and as a unified entity, they're like a fist ball up. They're no longer going to turn around and stand by and say, well, you can come in here and do whatever. Nope. Game changer. So these young Turks are not going to turn around and just stand by anymore. And that's going to be a real question mark.
Last question. We do have to also look into, we do have these intelligence agencies that could go into these countries and maybe do a little bit of a game change due to the BRICS. What is your opinion on that? Do you have an opinion? Do you think if they do that, it could change this ball game a little bit as far as keeping the U.S. on a better tracking? What do you think about something like that?
See, the problem with counterinsurgency is this: that has been a game that worked for many years. And in that counterinsurgency, I mean, basically toppling over various administrations. But now the problem with it is, like you're seeing in Sudan, you're not having the same situation that you can just go in there and just mop up the problem and just call it a day. Now you have basically something different than the Taliban and ISIS. You have a whole different program now. And they're not necessarily playing the same game because now they're understanding. They have been educated, like I said before, in military tactics in the States. They have spent time being trained by various groups here under security and various military, let's say, counterinsurgencies and counterintelligence agencies. So they understand you. And as Sun Tzu said, the art of war, understand thy enemy and thy can understand how to deal with thy enemy. We have a different problem now.
All right, we'll end it there for right now. Darius A. Ross, DariusARoss.com. Darius, before you go, just tell the viewers a little bit of what's going on with you before we have you on again to talk more about this.
I'm debuting in June 15th a new newsletter that's going to be dealing with its PPP, Prepare, Participate, and Profit. It's going to be a three-part newsletter that for hosts like yourself for podcast shows, I'm going to be giving the viewers 90% off, and they can send me an email to get on my mailing list to get an idea about what they should do in order to prepare, participate, and profit during this turbulent time.
Okay. And where is it just going to be on the website that they can sign up for that, or?
Well, they can sign up on the website. That'll be debuting again on April 15th, but they can send me an email, and in the subject line, they can put in their PPP. I want to be on the newsletter, and they can send the email to idrspktoyou at yahoo.com. So I, Doctor, speak to you at yahoo.com.
All right. Well, we'll have you on again, and your predictions have been pretty much 90% right so far. So I guess we should all be nervous and start trying to prepare for this. You don't have much time left. You better get your ass in game. Otherwise, the game will start and you'll be on the bench watching it happen from the sidelines. So, all right. Anyways, we'll end with that doom and gloom news. And Darius, will have you on again. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and I really
Thank you,
enjoy our
appreciate it.
conversations.
Thank you, appreciate it, Rob. Take care.